The room was filled with laughter, wine glasses clinking, and a dull hum of arrogant conversation. High above the city skyline, inside the penthouse suite of the luxury Mayfield Grand Hotel, some of the country's top executives gathered for an annual leadership weekend retreat. They called it a retreat, but really it was a show of wealth, a show of power, a show of who's in and who's never going to be. And sitting silently in the background, moving quietly between tables, wiping down countertops, pouring drinks with grace, was Eliza, a 36-year-old black woman in a plain black maid's uniform. She moved as though invisible, but she was watching and listening, because what the room didn't know was that Eliza wasn't just a maid. She was something else entirely, and by the time the night was over, they'd all remember her name. At the far end of the room, beside a grand fireplace, a sleek chess table sat under spotlight. Polished wood, ivory, and obsidian pieces. A luxury board the CEO had brought with him specifically to unwind. That CEO? Brennan Knox, founder of Knox Capital Group, a billionaire known for ruthlessly acquiring companies and laying off entire departments, then toasting to efficiency. He was loud, he was rich, and tonight he was bored. Anyone here brave enough to get beat? Brennan called out, smirking as he gestured to the board. A few of the younger execs laughed nervously. Nobody moved. That's when he looked up and spotted Eliza in the distance, adjusting a vase of orchids. "Hey," Brennan said, pointing his drink her way. "You know how to play chess?" The room chuckled. Eliza looked up, surprised. Her lips moved, then paused. "Yes, I do." "Well, come on then," Brennan grinned. "Let's make this interesting." The room erupted with sarcastic cheers. To them, this was a joke. The billionaire playing chess with the maid? A spectacle. Something to laugh about, record, maybe post online with some clever caption. But Eliza? She wasn't laughing. She calmly walked over and sat down across from him. And, without hesitation, she reached out and turned the board so Brennan could play white. The room went silent for half a second. Then the CEO raised an eyebrow. "Well, someone's got manners," he muttered. He moved his first pawn, and the game began. At first, Brennan was confident. He made aggressive openings, moved his queen early, tried to trap her bishop in the third round. But Eliza countered, smoothly, silently. Every move measured, every piece sacrificed only when needed. She didn't flinch. She didn't look around. She only watched the board. And with each passing move, so did everyone else. The laughter stopped. The jokes faded. Even the waitstaff paused in the hallway. Because something was happening. Eliza was winning. By move 18, Brennan had leaned forward. He was squinting at the board, now visibly annoyed. He moved a rook, attempting to pressure her queen. But Eliza calmly slid a knight into place. A trap. Brennan didn't see it. He took the bait. 2 turns later, she had his queen cornered and gone. The room gasped. Someone whispered, "Did she just take his queen?" Brennan slammed his palm on the table, then forced a laugh. "You play a lot, huh?" Eliza didn't look up. "Every day." He nodded, trying to recompose himself. But it was too late. He'd underestimated her, and she was only getting started. Before she wore a maid's uniform and served champagne to billionaires. Before she moved rooks and queens like a master. Eliza was just a little girl in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn. 1 bedroom, no father, a mother who worked late and barely made enough to cover rent. But in that cramped apartment sat an old, scratched-up chessboard, left behind by a neighbor who moved out and never came back. Eliza was 7 when she first touched a pawn. She didn't know what she was doing. Not at first, but her mind, sharp, quiet, fast, took to it like water finds its level. She taught herself, at first with books from the public library, then by challenging old men in the park, many of whom laughed when they saw her coming, only to walk away stunned. She didn't win every game, but she learned from everyone. By the time she was 16, Eliza had trophies. Not many, but enough to make her high school coach say something she'd never forget. "You don't play chess. You see through people." Her reputation grew. Small tournaments. A scholarship offer. She even got invited to a statewide competition. But then, her mother got sick, and everything stopped. Eliza turned down the scholarship. She stayed behind, worked nights, took whatever jobs she could to cover rent, food, hospital visits. Dreams? They didn't matter anymore. Survival did. So she folded up her boards, stored her trophies in a box, and became invisible to the world that once saw her brilliance. Until the night Brennan Knox tried to embarrass her in front of his friends. Back at the luxury hotel, the game was nearing its end. Brennan was sweating now. The same man who'd laughed and bragged about destroying startups in 5 moves had no idea how to stop a maid from dismantling his position. He reached for his bishop, stopped, then looked up. "You sure you've never played competitively?" Eliza responded quietly. "Doesn't matter. I'm playing now." People in the room started filming. Not because she was a spectacle, but because she was stunning. Her focus, her calm, her quiet defiance. Move by move, she cornered his king, slowly choking off every escape. You could hear a pin drop. The once rowdy party had turned into a silent classroom. Even Brennan's most loyal sycophants didn't dare speak. They could see it, clear as day. Their boss, the man who thought money made him untouchable, was outmatched by a woman he assumed was beneath him. And then, it happened. Check. Brennan froze. His hands hovered over the board. He scanned every piece, looking for an out. There was none. He looked up again, trying to mask the sting with a smirk. "You really gonna do this in front of everyone?" Eliza tilted her head. "You invited me." Then, she moved her last piece. Checkmate. The moment Eliza placed her final piece, it was like the oxygen was sucked out of the room. Silence. Brennan Knox, the billionaire CEO known for crushing competitors, had just been checkmated by his maid. The once smug grin on his face had vanished, replaced with tight lips and flaring nostrils. You could see the gears turning in his mind, trying to piece together how this could have possibly happened. One of the junior executives let out a gasp, followed by an awkward chuckle. Another muttered under their breath, "No way." Phones were still recording. Not to mock her anymore, but because they knew this moment was history. Eliza didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She simply stood up, gathered the hem of her apron, and stepped away from the table with quiet dignity. She wasn't looking for applause. She wasn't looking for praise. She was looking for peace. And in that moment, surrounded by executives who had never seen her as anything more than background, Eliza had finally reclaimed her power. Brennan Knox tried to recover. He gave a half-hearted chuckle, downed the rest of his scotch, and waved his hand. All right, I let her win," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But no one was buying it. Not tonight. They had just witnessed something genuine. And it was clear Brennan didn't let her win. He got outplayed, outclassed, outsmarted by the very person he'd dismissed. After Eliza left the table, murmurs filled the room. Who is she, really? Did she train somewhere? I've never seen anyone play like that. And suddenly, Eliza was no longer the maid. She was the woman who beat Brennan Knox at his own game. Within 24 hours, clips of the match began circulating on social media. Someone captioned it. This billionaire tried to make fun of Maid. She made him look like a fool with chess. The post went viral. 2 million views by morning. And Eliza? She had no idea yet, because she'd gone home that night, the same way she always did, quietly. But her world was about to change. At Knox Capital HQ the next morning, Brennan sat in his office, watching the viral clip. His PR team stood nervously around him. "You're trending," one of them said. "Not in a good way." Brennan didn't respond. He just stared at the footage, frame by frame, watching himself lose control on a chessboard to a woman he thought couldn't possibly be smarter than him. "What's her name?" he asked flatly. "Eliza Johnson," his assistant replied. "She's been working at the hotel for over 2 years. But we pulled her resume. She's got a degree in applied mathematics. Used to be a junior chess champion in New York." Silence. "You should offer her a job," one PR rep said, "before someone else does." Brennan blinked, because in the very moment he thought he'd humiliated her, she had made herself the most valuable player in the room. The sound of her phone buzzing woke Eliza up. She sat on the edge of her small twin bed, blinking in confusion as dozens, then hundreds, of notifications lit up her screen. Messages, mentions, voicemails from unknown numbers. The video was everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even LinkedIn. She watched in disbelief as her face appeared on a screen, quiet, calm, focused, while Brennan Knox sat across from her, falling into checkmate. She scrolled through the comments. This is Queen energy. She beat him with dignity. Power move. Hire her. Now, one comment stood out. What do you call a maid who plays like a master? You call her CEO material. Eliza didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she did neither. She just stared at the screen and whispered. This wasn't supposed to happen. By noon, reporters were at the front desk of the hotel asking to speak to her. Morning shows were emailing her public inbox. A famous tech podcast wanted her on their next episode. A local news anchor called her directly and left a message. You've become a symbol, Eliza. People want to hear from you. But Eliza wasn't used to being seen, let alone celebrated. For most of her life, she was told to keep her head down, to work hard, to stay out of the way. Now the whole world wanted her to step up. That same afternoon, a black Lincoln pulled up to her apartment. A chauffeur got out, handed her an envelope, and said, Mr. Knox would like to invite you to lunch. You'll be compensated for your time. Inside the envelope, a crisp white card, gold trim, with only 5 words. We want to talk. BK. Attached was a check. $10,000. Just to show up. Eliza stared at it for a moment, then placed it on her kitchen table, next to the jar where she kept coins to buy groceries. She showed up, not for the money, but for the moment. She walked into the 34th floor lounge of Knox Capital wearing a simple navy dress and her natural curls pinned back. The room went silent. Executives who had ignored her the night of the party were now standing to greet her. Brennan rose from the head of the table, forced a half-smile, and gestured to the seat across from him. Miss Johnson, thank you for coming. Eliza sat, folding her hands calmly. You wanted to talk. So talk. Brennan leaned forward. Look, what happened the other night, it went viral. And while I'd rather forget it, we can't ignore the impact you've had. He cleared his throat, then continued. We're launching a leadership diversity initiative. You could lead it. Full salary, benefits, office, whatever you need. You're clearly more than a maid. There it was. The offer. The attempt to recruit the story, not just the woman. Eliza looked around the room. At all the polished shoes, expensive watches, 4 smiles. Then back at Brennan. You think offering me a position makes up for what happened? He shifted uncomfortably. No, I think it proves we're learning. Eliza gave a half-smile. Then learn this. She stood up. You invited me to the board to fix your PR problem, but you never asked what I actually want. And with that, she walked out. No check, no deal, no bowing. Because this time, she wasn't playing anyone's game but her own. It had been 3 days since Eliza walked out of Brennan Knox's boardroom without saying yes, without blinking, and without taking his money. 3 days of silence. She returned to work at the hotel like nothing had happened. She vacuumed rugs, polished brass railings, changed linens. But behind her calm eyes and steady hands, a storm was forming. Then, out of nowhere, an email pinged into her inbox. Subject line, a position tailored to your mind. Confidential. The sender? Vivian Cho, CEO of Blacklight Strategies, a global consulting firm known for recruiting talent from unexpected places. The message was short. Eliza, we've been watching with great interest. We'd like to invite you to our headquarters. Not for a job interview, for a partnership. Vivian wasn't like Brennan. She didn't walk with arrogance. She didn't talk with condescension. She welcomed Eliza into her sleek glass office like an equal. A chessboard sat in the corner, half played. You know, Vivian said, I watched your game against Knox 5 times. You weren't just playing the board. You were playing him. Eliza didn't flinch. That's how I was raised. You learn to read the room before you speak in it. Vivian leaned forward. I want to build a new division, one focused on human strategy, decision-making, executive intuition, the psychology of competition. And I want you to lead it. Eliza blinked. No Maid uniform. No condescending laughs. No performance. This was real. That evening, Eliza walked the same path she took every night after a shift. Past the corner store. past the old park bench where she played her first chess game with a stranger, past the community center where she once volunteered to teach kids how to play. And as she walked, she realized something. She had power now, not the kind that came with titles, but the kind that came with truth. And people were listening. The next morning, Eliza called Vivian. "I'll do it," she said, "but I have a condition." Vivian smiled through the phone. "Name it. We open a mentorship program. For girls like me. Young, brilliant, overlooked." Vivian replied without hesitation. "Done." And just like that, Eliza stepped into a world that had once shut her out, but now opened its doors because she knocked with intellect, not ego. The lights dimmed. The room was quiet. All eyes were fixed on the red circle in the center of the stage. And there, standing tall in a crisp suit, braids pulled back, voice calm, was Eliza. No longer just the maid who beat a CEO, now a strategist, a thought leader, a movement. The screen behind her read, "Strategic thinking from the shadows. How the overlooked see everything." She took a deep breath, then began. They didn't expect me to win. They expected me to fold, freeze, or fumble. What they didn't realize is that being invisible teaches you how to see, not just the board, but the players. The audience leaned in. We don't get to be reckless. We don't get to be loud. So we become precise, intentional. And when we move, it's checkmate. A pause, then applause. Her talk spread like wildfire. Clips hit Instagram, LinkedIn, even national news. In less than 48 hours, her TEDx talk passed 10 million views. People weren't just watching. They were learning. Weeks later, Eliza stood in front of a room filled with young black girls. Some from underfunded schools, others from tough neighborhoods, all hungry for knowledge. She didn't stand behind a podium. She sat in a circle with them. Chessboards on every table, journals beside them. "You don't have to be loud to be powerful," she told them. "You just have to know when to move." One girl raised her hand shyly. "Miss Eliza, did you ever think you'd be here?" Eliza smiled. "No, but I was always ready." The room nodded, because they could see themselves in her. And now, they believed they could be ready too. 1 month later, a letter arrived at her office. Handwritten, no logo, no assistant signature. From Brennan Knox. "Eliza, I owe you an apology, not just for underestimating you, but for teaching my people to underestimate others like you. Watching you rise has forced me to confront what I ignored for too long. I'm stepping down as CEO and donating $5 million to your mentorship program. Not as a favor, but because it's what should have been done a long time ago." Eliza read it twice, then placed it in a drawer, not for pride, but for record. The record of how one move on a chessboard changed a life, a room, a company, and maybe even a generation. As Eliza passed a storefront downtown, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass. She paused. Gone was the uniform. Gone was the silence. In its place stood a woman who had played the game, not with arrogance, but with grace. A woman who had walked into the lion's den and left it tamed. A woman who turned checkmate into a beginning. Like my video and subscribe my channel for more daily videos.